Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Rothman. I'm the Wildlife Campaigns Director for Environment America and Environment Colorado. Today, I'm joined by Patrol Deputy of Boulder County Sheriff's Department, Michael Moravec. We're here today talking about wildlife vehicle collisions, wildlife crossings, and road safety. Thank you for joining us, Deputy Moravec.
I'm Deputy Michael Moravec. I do work for the Boulder County Sheriff's Office in Boulder County, Colorado. Boulder County, for those that don't know, covers about 750 square miles. It's everything from the Continental Divide to East County Line Road, a little bit further, a couple miles west of I-25, and everything north of Highway 66, north of the town of Lyons, all the way down to about Highway 128, just below the town of Superior there. So Highway 36, Highway 93, a couple of front range highways right at the base of the foothills there. I've been working there since July 2018, so I'm coming up on my eighth year there. And I do have some patrol experience in Natrona County, Wyoming. I had 2 years up there, so we had the I-25 corridor
Okay.
up there as well.
You mentioned Highway 36, and so I want to ask you. Of course, roads create challenges for wildlife movement. They cut up habitat, restrict movement, while also being a source of direct mortality. Environment America, Environment Colorado are working on policy and projects in both Colorado and at a federal level to help connect habitat. And one of the mechanisms, of course, is wildlife crossings. And nationally, there are some 1.5 to 2 million wildlife collisions with large animals like deer, elk, bear, bighorn sheep, all animals that occur here in Colorado. And of course, they result in a million plus dead animals, but they're also, these crashes cause billions of dollars in damage, tens of thousands of people injured, and unfortunately cause hundreds of deaths to motorists. Kind of at a national scale, we wanted to speak with you a little bit today about what you see in Boulder County and what impact wildlife vehicle collisions have for you as a sheriff's deputy, and what you see on the roads on a regular basis. And so, just to start things off, I'm just wondering how often do you deal with vehicle collisions with wildlife?
It comes in waves, and to a
Okay.
degree, I think it's seasonal as well. As winter approaches and fall's coming down and those animals are moving to lower elevations, I think it becomes much more prevalent, particularly at some of our flats highways, as I'll call them, a diagonal highway between Boulder and Longmont versus some of our alpine highways, peak to peak highway, Highway 72 up there. But I would say it's as often, if not more than a weekly occurrence, generally
Okay.
speaking, during some of those times. And of course, sometimes multiple times a week as well.
Oh wow. How many animals and like what kind of animals do you see causing the collisions?
The most common ones that we see in Boulder County are definitely going to be our deer and our elk populations. We have had mountain lion strikes, we've had
Oh
bear
wow.
strikes, and we have had some moose strikes up on the peak to peak highway as well. So pretty much all of the big game animals, with the exception of bighorn sheep. In the 8 years that I've been there, I have specific experience with those strikes. It's certainly possible that a bighorn sheep impact has happened on the North or South St. Vrain highways outside of Lyons. I have
Sure.
seen those animals up there.
Elk, moose, mountain lion, deer, those are all big animals that are going to cause probably lots of damage. And so just wondering if you can tell us a little bit about the kind of damage that you see when you encounter some of these light vehicle collisions. And then also, what kind of impact does it have when you have to deal with a wildlife vehicle collision on your kind of day-to-day work?
Yeah, I mean, you can imagine those large animals that are generally stationary in the roadway, or at least slow enough moving that you may as well be hitting a brick wall, is often the comparison that we use when we're teaching new cadets or teaching traffic safety classes. So the damage can be very extensive, especially when you take into consideration the highway speeds generally as well. Highway 36 going from Boulder to Lyons, it's a 65-mile-an-hour highway. And so you strike an elk, several hundred pounds of
Hmm.
stationary mass, it's going to cause substantial damage. It's disabling damage. When you have a disabled vehicle now, we have considerations like, is it in the lane of travel still, or is it safely able to get over into the emergency lane? Because now, again, we have a two-lane, one direction, both ways highway, speaking to Highway 36 specifically, where if that vehicle's in the lane of travel, we're now taking resources using our emergency lights to alert the other drivers that may be coming around blind corners at highway speeds or better. Colorado has a reputation for some high speeds. I-25, we've all been there. People are flying 90, 100 miles an hour down the highway. Highway 36 is no different. There are speeders there as well. So you add the cover of darkness to it, and then we want to make sure that those people are being safe. If the animal is still in the roadway as well, potentially causing secondary collisions, for one person to move a moose or a bull elk out of the
Yeah.
roadway can be a pretty significant challenge. So now we're talking about resources not just to keep the scene safe, but to move the vehicle, to move the animal out of the roadway, and then clear those other obstructions so that there's no secondary collisions as well.
Very important point, just like the secondary collisions, like you could have that domino effect. Or do you work with other agencies when you have a bull elk, in the road, you have to dispatch the animal at some time, at some point? How do you kind of deal with that situation? Who else do you have to work with?
Yeah, obviously we're going to deal with Colorado State Patrol. They're going to be the ones that come and take the primary investigation for the vehicle collision portion of it. So that we work very closely with them. Sometimes they call us. Sometimes we just happen to get there a little bit before them. The Colorado Parks and Wildlife is another one. If we have a large bull or a large buck, Colorado Parks and Wildlife wants to know about those large male animals when they're killed on the roadways. So a buck has a certain breadth, a certain number of inches spread on their antlers. They want to know about that. If elk are 6 points or better, I believe is the standard. They want to know about that, kind of the Samson Law or a reapplication of the Samson Law. So we work with them as well. And then even outside that too, you have your fire and medical agencies for people who may be injured as a result of these
Mm,
collisions. You have
yeah.
your tow companies that are coming out and trying to get the vehicle out of the roadway. So it really expands beyond law enforcement or at least local law enforcement as well.
Not only are we talking about one animal and potentially one vehicle, but there could be other vehicles, and then all of the other entities that are spending time and resources having to deal with this issue. And 7,000 plus animals hit on the road in Colorado. That was the recent number from CDOT. And you started talking a little bit about data collection that you might do with CPW, or in regards to the animals that you see hit on the side of the road.
There are certainly times where we're driving down the road and we see an animal on the side of the road or maybe even in the road still. And again, we have to step out and make sure that animal gets out of the roadway. And you know that animal's been hit, but the vehicle is long gone. It was one of those
Mm.
situations where maybe they clipped it, they were able to drive away or something like that, and we're never able to follow up with that because we don't have any information on who that individual was. That there is probably some underreporting that's happening with some of those collisions. As far as Boulder County Sheriff's Office data collection, like I said, our responsibility when we respond to these crashes is primarily to assess the safety of the driver of that vehicle that was involved in that accident. Do they need medical attention? And then also the safety of the scene and the other motorists on the roadway, using our emergency overhead lights, staying with that driver, whether or not there's an animal or debris in the roadway that needs to be moved and things like that. The reporting aspect goes for Boulder County specifically to the Colorado State Patrol as the investigating agency
Okay,
for that accident.
got it.
The only time Boulder County would actually collect a record of that crash would be if we were assisting that maybe there was some impairment issues with the driver that contributed to that crash, and that's going to end up in a criminal case on the side of Colorado State Patrol. Or, the second part of the last question you asked, do we have to dispatch animals? And to answer that question, yes, we sometimes do. If an animal is critically injured and it is the humane thing to
Yeah,
euthanize that animal, we
yeah.
do sometimes do that as well.
On Highway 36 or other areas, when you're driving, just you're out there all the time, are there areas that you have identified like, okay, this area, there's a high number of collisions?
North Foothills Highway or Highway 36 between Boulder and Lyons is a very, very high frequency collision area. We get collisions throughout the county, I'll say, including some of the smaller canyons. I've been on collisions on Left Hand Canyon, Linden Road, which is just outside the city of Boulder, to the
Uh-huh.
west end, going up some of those canyons. Highway 93 going south out of Boulder down towards Arvada is a collision area. Highway
Mhm.
66 is a collision area. Even again, the diagonal highway between Boulder and Longmont, much further into the flats away from the foothills, we've had some pretty significant wildlife collisions. But Highway 36, the North Foothills Highway between Boulder and Lyons, is absolutely our highest frequency area for some of those wildlife collisions.
That's, I think, important information for all of us watching this, and people using that highway in particular. There is proposals to build wildlife crossings on this stretch of road. Would love to stay in touch with you and keep you up to date. As based on your experience and understanding the benefits of wildlife crossings, how do you feel like a wildlife crossing structure might benefit wildlife and drivers on this road?
I think it's going to benefit both. I think it's going to benefit the wildlife by providing them a safe area to cross, give them longer life. Maybe some of our younger bucks and bulls are going to grow older a little more often and repopulate a little bit better. Speaking of the law enforcement side of thing, I do love wildlife, but my number one concern obviously is to protect human life. And I think a wildlife crossing and providing a safe alternative to the North St. Vrain herd, I believe is what it's called, that traverses that area of North Foothills Highway. A better opportunity to come down out of the foothills and into the flats as they start to winter would absolutely benefit the safety of the drivers on that roadway.
What safety tips do you have for drivers on how they might avoid hitting wildlife on the road?
Mind the speed limits. They're set for a reason. You go around a blind curve going 10, 15 miles an hour over the speed limit, and you are only taking away from your own reaction time when something pops up that you're not expecting to be there, particularly at night. A deer or an elk or a moose, much more dark colored, standing on that shoulder, potentially coming out into the roadway. So don't be in a hurry to get anywhere. They're speed limits, not speed requirements.
Amazing. Appreciate you taking some time today to speak with us. And thank you so much for your time. And of course, be safe out there on the roads.